Hey guys, this is B-Word here at the Bleach Brothers podcast. Just a friendly reminder that we are sponsored by Jerky Pro, and if you are a fan of jerky, make sure to go to www.jerky.pro, use code BleachBros5 at checkout to get yourself a little bit of a discount. Both Jake and I are huge fans of jerky, and Jake working in the beef industry and me being just a fellow fat kid, we absolutely swear by Jerky Pro. You will not miss out by ordering Jerky Pro. Do not let some of the sticker shock you. There are free shipping options, multiple flavors, etc., so forth. If you do order Jerky Pro, make sure to use code BleachBros5 at checkout. Welcome into the Bleach Brothers podcast 2023-2024 NFL preview show. I am here as normal, as usual, as often as I can with my co-host, Jake the Hater. Jake, how are you tonight?
Good. What am I tonight? Good buddy, best friend, hated person. Like, you usually have a distinction, like a good adjective to describe me. And tonight was just, I'm here with you.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I really thought a whole lot about it, but you're always my good buddy, my man.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we're still on those terms. Because, I mean, I'm fine if we're not. I would like to hash them out in public, in front of people. You know me, I'm a contrarian. I'm confrontational. I don't care. I would, like, if we were a couple, and we were out to dinner at Sizzler, because that's the place you would take me, and we were eating at a Sizzler, and, you know, we were having that moment where you're just being quiet, and you're just saying, no, everything's fine. I would have it out with you and throw shrimp at you and yell at you and, like, be loud and obnoxious about it. And I feel you would be, like, the more sane person, like, just sitting there like, okay, I'm going to get my purse. I'm going to watch the Cowboy game at home on TiVo, and we're going home. Like, I feel like that's how we work.
But before we leave, I would get the unlimited soft serve, and I'd make sure to put some of the sprinkles on it, just so that way if I'm going to not enjoy my night, at least I can get my soft serve out of it. However, because we do have friends of the show here and also some repeat guests for us, I don't necessarily want to fight with you. I'm all about the Discord. I'm all about the discourse. I would love to have some solid interaction with you tonight, but we'll just settle with good buddy if you're okay with that.
I'm going to have soft serve interaction with you tonight now. Just because that's on the brain. So I'm your Dairy Queen, bro.
I'm just going to keep that in mind. So with that, you want to go ahead and introduce our guests?
My friends. Always my friend. Well, I think you and J-Rob became pretty good friends from the Cover O.
Yeah, we established that on the last time.
Yeah,
we established that last time.
The Cover Zero podcast.
Just because we're friends. There you go. Yeah.
There it is, yeah. One of the best breakdown analysis persons that I know for football. I mean, this guy watches tape more than a fucking cabinet maker uses a measuring tape. J-Rob, how you doing tonight? Welcome into the show.
Doing good. It's been a long week of work, but always glad to be talking football, and so happy that we are just it's basically football season right now, and it's the favorite time of the year, unless you ask my wife. So okay. I'm doing very good.
Second guest, another friend of mine, B-Word, another friend of mine, Travis Demers, Section 113, the voice of the Blazers. Great knowledge on sports. Travis, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's been a weird week, as you know, Jake. But again, why am I here? Like, you got me with you two guys who talk football all the time, and Jordan, who, look, dude knows his football, right? And I haven't covered football in a few years now. What the hell am I doing here? I mean, I love talking football, but why?
I like when you're here. As I said, great sports knowledge. I'm just like, you've gotten to the point, I think, in your sports world where we just give you quotes and we just give you the whole gamut instead of just saying like one or the other. So no, I think we have a good time. I think you have good points to say. Plus, you make me sometimes look a little smarter now. See, like, sometimes you have to like go for the guy that, like, I'm going to tee it up right now. Like, I got J-Rob coming on. I don't want to look like an idiot. B-Word pays attention a little more to me. I'm a hockey guy. Who can I bring? I can bring a basketball guy, and I'll look. We're playing fair now. You know what I mean? Like we know J-Rob is our scratch golfer. B-Word is the guy driving the cart. I'm the one providing the beers, and you're shirtless and doing what you do.
Hey, that works for me.
I mean, I would much rather you be shirtless than the shirt that you're wearing, but we're not necessarily going to get into that there, Demers.
Are you wearing a hat with your own face on it, by the way?
I am, actually. Yes.
Wow, you were shirtless.
I'm so happy you said that.
Yes.
You didn't give yourself your own nickname, did you?
No.
He did. Put those things together,
he
too.
did.
Like, Okay.
I was born with my nickname pretty much. It was just one of those things. But long story short, guys, we had first off, thank you guys for being here. I love this. This is one of the episodes every single year that I look forward to. I love chopping it up with you guys about the NFL. This show has become pretty important for our podcast to not only highlight the upcoming season, but it also ties into our Super Bowl preview show, which is always a lot of fun, and you guys take part in that. Before we get into the nuts and bolts about the rundown, Jake, I have a couple questions for you, and of course, Demers, J-Rob, chime in as you see fit. Jake, last year on this particular episode, you announced that you chose a new NFL team.
Yeah.
So a little backstory: if this is somebody's first time listening to this episode or our podcast, you for the longest time have been a Washington football team, the R word fan, right? You have grown up in that family. You and I have had some classic battles in the NFC East as me being a Cowboys fan. Last year, you decided that you didn't want a part of the NFC East, and you ended up choosing a team in the NFC West with the Arizona Cardinals, which is really fun because you and I are actually meeting up later on this month to actually go and attend that game with some of our podcast friends, which will be a good time. Number one question for you: how are you doing with that team swap? And number two, is there any looking over your shoulder now that Dan Snyder's out of Washington?
So I don't really care because as a R word fan, Commander fan, whatever you want to call it, we were in last place for a while. We weren't a great team. So I'm used to losing. Okay. But I got to admit this, the way I'm looking at it is, if a name change happens, and now that Dan Snyder's gone, I feel like that guy who left his wife for the bimbo secretary for a year and then realized he made a mistake and might need to go back. And so I'm still finishing the Bahama trip and doing all the nasty in the room, but I might make that phone call and bounce
80-20 rule, man.
And bounce right back and say, you know, I fucked up because I think I did. So that's how it's going. I mean, whatever, dude. I mean, I was from Arizona. You know me, I'm really heavy into hockey and baseball. I like football. I grew up with it. I enjoy watching it. But I don't know. I've became more about the money line and fantasy. I think I'm like the younger generation. I mean, we were on the Bromingos podcast and we were talking about how, remember Dante? We're like, "What's your team?" He's like, "Tom Brady doesn't play. I don't care anymore." And there's so many people that are fans of players instead of teams these days, and it's insane to me. But it sucks. I mean, they're terrible. I mean, the over, like, if I could just say this, the over under for them right now, the opening line was 3.5 games. That's for this season. That tells you how bad they are. And so, I mean, the only saving grace, I guess, is that nobody could have claimed that I was a bandwagon jumping because this is true. They're so bad. At
least you didn't go to like the
terrible,
Chiefs or
exactly.
some team with a recent mode of success. So, gentlemen, I'm going to open this back up to you. I kind of have some sports thoughts on this myself, but if Jake were to go back to the homeland, should that be present? Is that something that just in the sports rules, the unwritten sports rules, that he's able to do without issue? Or is this something where once you jump off the ship, you just need to run with it?
Once you already declare yourself a person whose allegiance is basically up for grabs, then I feel like doing it again, you've just continuing the same behavior that you've already established yourself. So really, I mean, the damage has been done as far as him jumping ship. I mean, if he wants to jump ship right now, I get it. But if then the Cardinals are good and you go back, I mean, we'll give you shit on the show. But either way, your allegiance is already up in the air, and it can tend to sway as the wind blows, as it might. So do as you please. Do as you please.
So here's how I see that. Like, you ever make a decision by flipping a coin?
Yeah, right? I do.
It's what I tell my kids, and I tell my wife this too. Like, if you want to make a decision, flip a coin. Not because the result of the coin flip is going to matter, because you're going to find yourself rooting for one side or the other, right? So when that coin's in the air, like, oh, better be tails, and it's like heads, 2 out of 3, 4 out of 7. Like the point of that is, like, whether you realize it or not, you have an allegiance here, right? Yeah. And eventually that allegiance is going to take you back to whatever the hell they're calling the football team from Washington eventually. And if that's where you go, whatever makes you happy, bro.
I guess though, like, it wasn't just the fact of the name change. It was just the embarrassment of Dan Snyder. I mean, we've seen bad owners. We've seen dump shit. I mean, a lot more has came to light over the last 20 years, I'd say, in football, especially with the technology side and stuff. But I mean, just the egregious nature of how he acted, and how he treated not just the fan base. I mean, the funny thing was you couldn't bring a sign into that stadium. You couldn't have a cardboard sign with anything on it because people were writing things about him and it hurt his feelings, so he stopped. So I had a goal at one point in my life where I was just going to write it on my butt and run around pantsless until they kicked me out, saying "fuck Dan Snyder." Never got to happen, but it's that point. That was also part of it. I wouldn't feel bad for other fans, like B-Word, if Jared Jones had some problems like that and he decided to do it because there's more to it than just being the team. I mean, he disgraced the team so much for me as well. I mean, I didn't really care that the name change happened. It was just also, though, that they took so long to come up with that. And it was like, you could have done so many other better things you didn't. But besides that, I'd rather get over that past, B-Word. I'm still going to be with my bimbo right now. Maybe I'll go back to my ex-wife. I have no idea for my team, but let's actually get into what's happening fucking now.
Well, real quick though. So I lived in DC for a while and I worked in media over there. And I've been to games when they were still the Redskins. Are we even allowed to say Redskins? Because that's whatever.
You're
when they were
podcast,
still
man.
the R word, but before they changed their name, right? This was 2012, 2013. That fan base, it's an unbelievable fan base. As much as I hate that team, and as much as I hate all of the teams and the fans in DC, except for maybe the Nationals, the fan base for that team is so unbelievably passionate, right? You got to respect that. And people that had been the third, fourth generation fans of that team were jumping off the bandwagon and getting rid of their season tickets, not because of the name change, but because of Daniel Snyder and the joke that he made of that franchise. And I've been following, some of the guys that I know that still work in media over there, and it's a new life. It's a completely new lease on things, and I'm happy because even though I can't stand that football team or their fans, they have a piece of them back. And as a sports fan, you don't want to see other people have to suffer like that because it was brutal.
It was brutal. And really, I mean, again, as a fan of a team in the NFC East that competes against that team, I hate that team with everything that I have. However, I did, Jake and I have had a number of conversations prior to his swapping and switching and whatever else. Dan Snyder is just a terrible owner. I mean, a lot of people talk about Jerry Jones being a terrible owner, and I'll say that Jerry Jones is a terrible GM. He's actually a pretty decent owner. And I do think that there's a distinction there, whereas Dan Snyder was one of those people who, like Jake said, when he got his feelings hurt, it was time to implode and rebuild. And I don't think that's sustainable in any way, shape, or form. But I am glad to see that there's new blood. And I think that new blood and ownership within any league is probably a good thing, just generically. However, of course, depending on what they do with that new opportunity for them is really going to determine how their success is, both on the field in the case of football, but also outside in the community. Jake, whatever you decide to do with that, I'll support, but I did want to at least revisit that. And speaking of revisiting things, there was a couple picks from last season that I wanted to bring up. And Demers, I'll start with you. When we were talking about win-loss records and who's going to win divisions.
I know exactly where you're going with this because it was a total disaster.
All of our picks were a total disaster. I'm just going to flat out say this, but I'm going to go specifically to your team. Your team, the New York Football Giants.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else, but go ahead.
Nope. You said that they were going to be last in the division. There was no talking with you that they were going to have any ounce of success. Instead, they actually turned out not only to be not last in the division, but they made it into the playoffs and they actually won a playoff game. Reflecting on your decision and your choice there, and of course being that it's your team, talk to me a little bit about your fandom last year. How did that impact your thoughts on the team? How did that impact your overall thoughts by the end of the season?
Well, I had no expectations going into the year because, I did have expectations. They just weren't good. Daniel Jones struggled. The defense struggled. The offensive line was horrendous, and it has been for years. They hadn't won a playoff game since they won the Super Bowl. It had been a decade since they had won a playoff game. And I thought Daniel Jones was just another one of these quarterbacks that was not going to get a second contract, and they were going to have to go back to the draft again in a couple of years. I still don't think Daniel Jones is the kind of quarterback that you can put on, he can put the team on his back and carry you to a championship. But let's be honest, and this is hard for me to say out loud. Eli Manning wasn't either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Giants had an unbelievable defense the years that they won the Super Bowl, right? They beat the Patriots the first year with their defense, right? One of the best offenses of all time. They held them to 14 points in the Super Bowl. They were in Tom Brady's face all night long in Super Bowl 46. They had a great running game, very good receivers, good offensive line. Eli Manning was just the right quarterback for that team. So you can get the job done with the right quarterback for your team if everything else is terrific. I didn't give the defense enough credit. I didn't give the rest of the parts enough credit, and I certainly didn't give Brian Daboll enough credit. My feelings were almost exclusively based on Daniel Jones, that you can't win with this guy. And you can. He's just a middle-of-the-road, pretty good quarterback who has above-average running ability and speed. He still throws too many interceptions. You just have to limit those, and if you put the right team around him, you can find a way to win, and that's what they did last year.
Do you think he did better with the interceptions last year, though?
What's that?
He did. I thought he did a lot better last year with his turnovers and interceptions.
He did, but there were a lot of questionable throws that just because the numbers aren't there doesn't mean the throws were. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Where he made a bad throw and the defense just dropped a wide open pick, stuff like that. Yeah.
So, J-Rob, last year when we got to the AFC West, of course, you being a Raiders fan, there was a lot of hype initially to potentially have a good year there. However, that's not the team that I want to discuss here. I actually chose two teams for you because that seemed to be, at least in the majority of our picks, the division where there was going to be the most competition. You had the Kansas City Chiefs and Mahomes, who have proven to be a very formidable team regardless of their of who's on their team. But specifically, I'd like for you to talk to me a little bit about the Chargers and the Broncos. You spoke a little bit about each of those teams last year, talked about their potential for success. Of course, the Broncos acquired Russell Wilson last year. The Chargers had an opportunity to do some things with I think the Chargers were injury ridden for the early part of the year, which probably played a big factor into their divisional success there. But you seem to think that those two teams were going to play a little bit better role within that division. Can you kind of talk with me about those two teams and why you thought that, and then how that ended up?
Well, I think with the Chargers, a lot of it stemmed down to what I expected Justin Herbert to do in terms of ascending a next level. I thought J.C. Jackson was going to be at least a piece for that team, the corner they acquired from New England. He was hurt, and it never really ever worked out. Even when he came back, he wasn't fully healthy, and then he completely snapped something else because he was playing on an injured leg. That didn't go well. They didn't have their receivers on the outside to be able to maximize Justin Herbert for more than what is about the equivalent of 3 total games in terms of the amount of time that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams played together. Same with Rashawn Slater. So, I mean, when you have then also Joey Bosa, who only played 6 games last year, this all led to a lot of disasters for what the expectation of this team would be. Denver, I do remember this. One, I did predict them to be a better team than they were. I also predict Russ to have a decline. I didn't think the decline would be as bad as it was. I didn't necessarily think I'd see things where the guy was just alienated by his teammates, and in part because he alienated himself from them. But the overall lack of organization that was there with Nathaniel Hackett and how it just completely disjointed everything was. I mean, they were shouting out the play clock in week 2 in Mile High like Karl Malone was at the free throw line so that they didn't get a delay game penalty. And yet stuff like this was happening in December. Receivers were lining up in the wrong areas. I mean, there was a lot of discombobulation that I didn't really expect to see to that degree. And that's why that team was that bad. Overall, I think more or less all of us had at least 2 teams from the AFC West in the postseason picture. I said 3. I thought my Raiders were going to be a lot better. I didn't foresee the defense being as bad as they were. So, yeah, overall, I think that was the division that everybody picked to be the best. Sure, they had the winner at the end of it all. But if you look down through the bottom ranks of it, those teams weren't quite as powerful as I thought they'd be.
I agree. My Super Bowl prediction was the San Francisco 49ers losing to the Buffalo Bills. I think that both of those teams on paper were very formidable at the beginning of last season. The Buffalo Bills, I think if they would have had a couple things go their way that season, they very well could have been the AFC champion that year, or at least being playing in at home for the AFC championship game, which may or may not have swayed their success. The San Francisco 49ers just couldn't find a healthy quarterback whatsoever coming into this season. There was talks that if Brock Purdy wasn't hurt and they would have won the game against the Eagles, that they potentially would have signed Phillip Rivers to perform in the Super Bowl. So I was wrong on both of those. I do think that both of those teams were set up for success last year, specifically with the 49ers. There was a lot of injury concerns at that quarterback position. Damn, their defense is just super solid, though. And with the Bills, I think that they have a chance to compete again this year. However, we'll get to that here in a little bit. Jake, you made a prediction that I think all of us were flabbergasted by.
The best prediction ever.
I mean, it depends how you define best.
The Texans. This is the Texans.
I know.
Houston
That's why
Texans
I wonder what you mean with best.
We're going to win the Super Bowl.
No, I didn't say the Super Bowl. I said their division.
Oh, that's correct.
True.
That's correct. You did say their division. Not only were you incorrect, but you were far off on that mark.
They were the third worst team in football. They were the third. Yes, and here's the thing: they barely beat the only reason they weren't is because of a tie. Like they were the
tie that you texted me after.
Right,
there's one.
There's one. Right I was so pumped after that happened.
Lovey played for that tie, and I was like, God damn it, Jake is going to be so happy. And sure enough, like 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated.
I was so pumped because guess what? They did it. They did the tie, so they weren't the worst team in the league. I was so proud of that pick. Oh, fuck you, B-word. I'm happy with it. I still stand by it. I was so proud of that prediction because nobody else would have said it. And you know what? That's what I do on this show. I had to say it, man.
Yeah, but if you're going to fail, don't you want to fail miserably?
That's right.
And have them just be the absolute worst team in the entire NFL?
No, I want.
Why fall flat on your face when you can go 6 feet deep with it?
I don't know. It's like when my wife asked me, "Would you rather lose a parlay by one leg or all of them?" I'm like, all of them. So I agree with you, Demers. Yeah, I want all of them to lose. Not the, I could have had this if I would have just changed my mind there and did a half point. But yeah, that was a.
If you're going to suck, be the best at sucking.
That was a bold
that
pick.
deserves a T-shirt.
That
needs to be on a T-shirt. Speaking of losing parlays, Jake, you brought to the table tonight a few betting lines that you wanted to discuss with us. So I'm going to throw this over to you, and it's all yours.
So the way I wanted to do this was because I like to, I like to dabble in gambling. I know Demers, you have before. J-Rob, I don't know if you're really into it as much, but I know you look at lines, but I don't think you're playing them as much. But I like to do the preseason ones, like just throw a few dollars here and there, like the big ones that can pay out pretty well, and not just like, oh, I'm going to bet the plus 13,000 that the Cardinals beat everybody in their division all 6 games. No, but like my favorite bet I placed the other day was the Eagles to score one rushing touchdown in every game this season, and it's paying.
What were your odds on that?
Plus 1,100. So I'll throw $10 at that because all they need to do is score one rushing touchdown every game. It could be far off, but it's one of those. But what I did here is I wanted to pick one for each of you to tell me how you would pick this based on a team that you're a favorite of. So, B-Word, I was actually going to start with you, and I was going to do a similar one as mine. And the best line that I saw that sort of intrigued me was the Dallas Cowboys to get one passing touchdown in each regular season game this year. Plus 700. Would you throw any money at that?
No.
Okay.
I would not. And the reason why I would not is because looking at the schedule, we are going against some pretty significant defenses in the 49ers, in the Jets because of everybody that they've acquired. Also within our division, you're looking at the defensive monsters within the Eagles and the Redskins, the Commanders and the Giants even, because the Giants have also improved on defense. I think when it comes to football, specifically November football, December football, you're not necessarily looking to light the scoreboard up. At least I would hope. I think you're looking to secure the win. And in that, always there seems to be some sort of defensive battle. And given Dak Prescott's lack of ball control last year, also given the fact that we do have some good wide receivers, but we are lacking, in my opinion, on a consistent rush game. I do think that there is opportunities for that not to succeed. So for that, I would not take that bet.
J-Rob or Demers, would you take that bet?
I would not. No. I think a lot of the things.
How much money are we talking about here?
Well, I mean,
$10.
I like. See, Demers is in my mindset. I'll throw $10 at that to win 70. Yeah, all day. But no, like let's say I give you guys on all these, I'll give you $100 to throw down. Would you throw the $100 on it or no?
I wouldn't do that one. Primarily when I'm looking at like if you're right when you said earlier, as much as I bet, my betting exists pretty much with fantasy football at the start of the year. I can't say no to live drafts, so I end up with like 4 or 5 of them, and I'm throwing 100 to 2 on each league, etc. Well, I think when it comes to betting on the NFL season, totals are things to stick to rather than something you have to hit every game, because you can be a great offense, a great defense, a great unit. There's something you excel at. But then there's just those weeks where you're off and you get boat raced. If we think about how good the like last year, Minnesota's offense, they can turn it on and establish the best comeback we've ever seen in the history of the game in the same season where they play against your Cowboys B-word and they completely shit the bed and blank. And that could be the only thing that deters you from that bet. So I look at more totals rather than something that you have to do every single week in and out.
Well, it's a perfect segue because the one I picked for you, thinking how your brain works, J-Rob, was for the Raiders, the over-under line was set at 6.5 wins. So whether you're taking the over-under, you could put the money aside, but over 6.5 wins is paying plus 110 right now, and under is minus 130. How many wins are they going to get this season, you think?
I have them at 6. I do have them at 6, but I would also I don't think it's strong enough to throw it on a negative win bet. I mean, I think this team could be even worse than 6, likely. I think the 6.5 is good. There's just, I don't know what this team thinks they're doing right now. Right. I don't. And there's moves that just, as we can get into later on, but there's just so many things that conflict and that I don't trust. And the other thing I think is this team does not trust its coach. So with that, I just can't go beyond 6 wins.
Well, I think the Vegas team is also dealing with the Vegas, hangover effect of moving and dealing with that, and more being about entertainment and selling seats rather than actually putting on the game. And I'm not downplaying it. I mean, the Golden Knights, of course, went and fucking won. FTGK for life. Fuck that team. But I've seen it before coming from there. When a team tries to go there, it's like, what is the game about? Is it about the game, or is it about getting butts in the seat and making it as spectacular as possible? I hope you guys can turn around. I would take the under on that, but I don't want to take the juice on it. Demers, what would you take on that?
I'm with you on that one.
I'd probably take the under. I mean, I was a Raiders apologist for a long time, and that didn't work out so well, right? So I'd go the under. And again, like minus 130, what's the point of even making that bet?
Exactly.
Well, that was like I was looking at the Cardinals line opened up, as I said, at 3.5 games. The problem was over 3.5 was plus 110 and under was minus 130. And it's like, that's not even a fun bet at that point, because regardless if they win 4, you're like, I didn't win much because I'm not going to throw a ton. I'm not going to throw the house at it.
Right.
Either way. The last one I had was an intriguing one, especially because you're from New York, Demers. We know you're a Giants fan. And there's always been that thing, Giants, Jets. More regular season wins for a match bet. Do you got the Jets winning more or the Giants? Because the Giants right now is paying plus 200. And if you pick the Jets, you're at minus 265. And no matter where you're throwing your money at, I mean, I'd be interested to see who you think is going to win more games and why.
Money aside on this, again, why are you putting any money on something that's minus 265, right? I didn't expect it to be that drastic, but the Aaron Rodgers effect is real, right? They have great young receivers, good running back core, fantastic defense. They've got an easier schedule. I mean, the Giants' schedule this year is brutal. And you think about it, obviously, you got to play the Eagles twice. You got to play the Cowboys twice. There's the Washington team, but it's a really tough schedule. And you look at what the Jets have, it's not as difficult of a schedule. The division, yes, you have Buffalo, but the Patriots are a middle-of-the-road team. Miami, borderline playoff team, maybe, depending on the health of their quarterback situation. I think the Jets are a team that could win 10 or 11 games.
I will say
I don't think they win that division, but they could. I think the Giants are probably, with their schedule, an 8 or 9 win football team.
I will say that the New York Jets also play the NFC East this year. So They do play the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Washington football team, or whatever their name is, and the New York Giants as well, just to kind of add that into your mix.
Once, not twice.
That's correct.
Final one, I'll throw this one out, B-word, and speaking of throwing, Dak Prescott to get 15 plus regular season interceptions, plus 125. Should I throw some money at that?
No, and here's the reason why. Like, I am not a Dak apologist, so please do not take it that way. I really try to be rational with my fandom. However, if you do look at the 15 tosses that he had last year that were intercepted, I'd say that 6 of them were wide receiver caused. And what I mean by that is that the wide receiver had hands on the ball, it popped out, hops into the defense. I don't think that that should be a quarterback stat, candidly. I just don't think that the NFL is going to rank that anything different than what it is. So not entirely Dak's fault. However, I would say that for 12 games and 15 tosses, that is way higher than I would want. Should Dak play all 17 games this year, I would say that he's probably still going to toss some INTs. I just don't know that it's going to be 15.
There are adjusted completion percentages, like metrics out there now, like PFF does one, where they don't put that on the quarterback. It's pretty cool to look over those at the end of the year and contrast them to the simple counting stats. Kind of like you were talking, B-Word, about Daniel Jones' numbers versus his actual play when it came to throwing the ball.
Right. So I don't know that I would do that. I mean, you guys can definitely have a different opinion on that. I think that Dak is kind of where Tony Romo was before Tony Romo ended his career, if that makes sense. In a sense where he's starting to get the mastery of it in his mind. He's starting to see things that he wouldn't have saw at, age 23, 24, stuff like that. I do think that has some maturation into it. You have to remember, for the last 2 years, Dak has been injured. Dak had a broken ankle, and then at the beginning of last year, he had a broken thumb. There's a lot of pressure in Dallas to do anything in Dallas because Dallas hasn't done anything in 30 years. With that, there wasn't really a competent wide receiver core. Like CeeDee Lamb, was he going to be good? Yes, he was. Was anybody else good? No, they weren't. So with that, you do tend to force the ball a little bit more. I do think that that's probably the cause of some of that aggressiveness that Dak played with. I wouldn't take the bet, but if you guys think that Dak's going to toss 15 more or plus 15, by all means, I'll respect your opinion on that.
I wouldn't take that one. I get it's better odds than the last two, but throwing picks like that is not Dak's game. That's more of the outlier and kind of what you were talking about. With drops, sure, those things will happen, but 15 is a pretty high number for a guy who's normally been very responsible with the ball.
Okay. Well, speaking of my bad money habits, we got to pay some bills, so let's take a break and we'll come back for the rest.
Hey everyone, it's Gnome, your favorite metal-loving midget. Do you love music? How about heavy music with some nice gutter rolls and amazing breakdowns? Look no further. Come join Jake the Hater and myself for your bi-weekly heavy music content. We bring you our newest singles and album recommendations. We are also bringing you new artists you may have never heard before. We are now streaming with a new RSS feed on Spreaker Prime. Come subscribe, like, and review. Also check out our Linktree for all our socials, feeds, and of course, our very own Spotify playlist. Horns up and stay heavy.
Welcome back to the Bleach Brothers Podcast NFL Preview. Thanks, J. Rob and Demers, for joining us here on this show again. Last year in our Super Bowl preview show, we actually introduced the Gridiron Hippo Awards. And some of those awards that we handed out were, amongst others, the MVP, the comeback player, the offensive rookie, and the defensive rookie. Going into this season, I just want to kind of gain your guys' knowledge here and hold your feet to the fire with making a prediction. So let's go around the table here and talk about MVP. Last year, Mahomes was MVP both for the season and Super Bowl MVP. The MVP that we'll talk about is strictly for the season here. So, Jake, on your MVP prediction, what position are you going with, and which player do you think is going to win that role?
QB, mainly because that's almost always who's going to get it. I'm going with Joe Burrow. I think the Bengals could make a play for the Super Bowl again. And I feel they're going to go deep. And I feel if he's healthy and he can get through, he's going to put up the numbers. I think also because unlike Patrick Mahomes, he doesn't put the team on his back in the same way, but he's going to carry that team if they have that much success. So that's why I'd give it to him.
Demers, I'm going to throw it over to you. What's your MVP pick?
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was going to say Joe Burrow. And, again, a lot of it comes down to health, obviously, and it sounds like he's going to be good to go for week 1. But, he has an unbelievable set of weapons around him, right? And no quarterback wins an MVP unless they have the guys around him. Joe Burrow has the guys around him, certainly on the outside. running back, all over the place, right? It's going to be a really good football team. They should be the favorites to win that division. I think they've got a great chance, of making a deep run. They've gone to back-to-back AFC title games and obviously the Super Bowl in there too. It's really easy to pick Mahomes, right? And it's tough when you have a guy who has had so much success like he has to say, well, I'm going to go another way because he's not going to win another one, right? Well, why not? He might. But I think with Joe Burrow's weapons and the numbers the numbers he put up 2 years ago were terrific, and last year great as well. But I think with what he has at his disposal, I think he's going to put up the best numbers. I think he's going to win the MVP.
J-Rob, I'm going to save you for last because I feel like out of everybody here on this podcast, you probably have more football knowledge than all of us. So I'm going to throw out my MVP, and I am going to choose a wide receiver. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not think that a wide receiver has ever been MVP in the league for the season. And that may have changed with the Rams guy the 2 years ago.
No,
Cooper
Cup,
Kupp.
that was just Super Bowl.
Okay, so I'm going to choose Jay Jett from the Minnesota Vikings, arguably the best wide receiver in the league right now, has some serious Randy Moss vibes, is competing historically right now with all of the best wide receivers in the game in history. I just think that if he has a solid year, I don't know that you can deny this man the MVP. So I'm going to take a shot in the dark on there and go with Jay Jett from the Minnesota Vikings as my MVP pick. And then, J-Rob, I'll throw it over to you.
I see where you guys are going with that Joe Burrow MVP pick. Sometimes we all know the MVP award is kind of about it's just your turn, even if you maybe weren't the guy that was the best. Charles Barkley in the NBA winning it over Michael Jordan, et cetera, things like that. So, I could see, not that Joe isn't worthy, but like you said, Demers, he's got all the places there. And I think that offensive line over there in Cincy is better than it's ever been. So this could be the last time they have to win it, and definitely on pace to do so, or at least has the chance. It's a quarterback award. B word, I'm sorry. It's a quarterback award. There. Speaking of bets, like we did in the last segment, there is a cool Jefferson bet to win MVP that gives you some really, really, really favorable odds. So if you want to throw a little bit of money on that and cash out nicely, that's one to attack. But
it's plus 10,000 right now. So it's good throw.
Throw $10 on that.
Yep.
I mean, why not? Just to see it happen. I mean, I don't think it will, but what's $10 with those type of odds? Anyway, to my answer, he's reached the point to where it's almost boring to pick him now. It's Patrick Mahomes. We have reached the point to where it's the most boring to pick him. And it's almost like you just get tired or you get voter fatigue like we did with Brady and these other greats. He's in that echelon now. But as long as he's got Travis Kelce, as long as he's got Andy Reid, that is why I have to pick Patrick Mahomes. He's just reached that type of greatness level status, And so if I'm going to have to guess, you know what I mean? We get the same odds each person, no matter what name. That's my choice.
That's a good pick. I think that you might be on there. Demers?
By the way, I looked it up, and there has been a wide receiver that has won the MVP.
Was it Jerry Rice?
No, it was Don Hudson in 1942.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
So it's been a little bit.
Wow. Okay. That's not what I would have anticipated, but I'm happy somebody got it once. So there we go. So comeback player of the year. I have some thoughts on this, but I'll go depending on how these picks go. I might interrupt or I might just go last. Demers, who do you think is going to be comeback player of the year for the 2023-2024 season?
I think that there are a few options here, right? And, whether it's a guy had an injury or a bad year or whatever, I think Breece Hall is the guy. And if his knee is good and you've got a team that is supposed to be as successful as the Jets are, and we all know that the Jets have not had a lot of success ever, right? And when I was growing up in New York, JETS stood for just end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been to a Super Bowl in almost 60 years. So if the Jets have a lot of success, obviously it's going to be attributed to Aaron Rodgers. But Breece Hall was the future in the backfield. If he can get even with Dalvin Cook, I can see a scenario where he ends up being the number one, and Breece Hall is your comeback player of the year after that injury last year.
Jake, what do you have?
This is not a quarterback award, so I'm going with a wide receiver. Like you should have. Or I mean, opposite of you. You should have went with a quarterback in the last one. You should have went with a wide receiver here. Calvin Ridley. I think actually him.
Are you betting on him to be the comeback player of the year?
I do. I think he's gonna have that year. He's gonna have that standout year. And just
who's throwing him the ball again?
I don't fucking know. Somebody on the Jags. Somebody's gonna throw him the ball. He's gonna catch it.
You serious? Why am I surprised?
Yeah, he's on the fucking Jags. He's the only player out there. You got to. He's like that guy, like when you were a kid in flag football, and you just said, "Hey, throw it in the air. I'll make it happen." That's all it's gonna happen. He's the whole Jags team. He's just gonna run out there. He's just gonna run around, catch the ball, score touchdowns. Fuck yes, give it to him. Roll Tide, baby.
Can you give a guy who was suspended for a year the comeback player of the year award?
Yeah, you can, because he'll get out of it. He's getting out of it.
I mean, I got a similar question. What if Deshaun Watson has a great season?
He could.
Ooh. That's a solid point there, J-Rob.
He's not going to get. He's going to get out of the suspension. It's going to go away. They're going to let him in.
If Haskins has
Watson.
If Watson has a solid
if Haskins
season,
wins it, that has to
right.
Win it.
That would be comeback
peace,
player
bro.
of the year for sure. Yeah.
No, but if Watson wins it, yeah.
If Watson wins it, I'm just curious what all those massage parlors are doing up there in Northern Ohio. So that's just interesting.
I mean, I wonder how they'll just skip over it.
This is like my Texan pick. I had to have a fucking spicy one. I had to have a spicy one. Okay?
The fact you didn't know Trevor Lawrence.
I know he's there, but I don't care. I don't give a fuck.
Oh, he's the guy that's throwing
Sunshine, dude. Sunshine's gonna throw a fucking ball. I don't care. I don't care about fucking Sunshine.
Oh, I thought that
just
was
throw
hilarious.
the fucking ball.
No wonder you picked the Texans to win that division.
All right, J-Rob, what do you got?
I got Tua.
Okay.
I'm actually going to bank on Tua to be healthy this year, and I think that's really the only thing that honestly held him back. And all the other things he's kind of had to deal with since he's arrived in the NFL, not starting very good because of one of the most porous offensive lines I've ever seen, in dealing with all these different things on whether or not we think this guy should be even playing football, if it's safe enough to for his health when the game is over, when he hangs the cleats up. If he can just put it together this year, be healthy, I think all the pieces are there for him to do so. It's got to go to him, and I'd love to see it for him.
I have kind of a radical pick here because I don't know how you go without saying DeMar Hamlin. DeMar Hamlin is the comeback player of the year.
He's the betting
53 he made the 53 in Buffalo. He was accused of not having his heart in the one game last year. I don't know as far as the depth chart last year if you would call him the best in the secondary. But I do think that the NFL is going to recognize that in some way, shape, or form should he make it through the entire year. So comeback player of the year, I would say is that. Prior to that, though, I was leaning Tua. So J-Rob, I will say that. And then prior to that, I was leaning Russell Wilson, but I don't think Russell Wilson's going to.
Yeah, Hamlin's the favorite.
I just don't think he'll be good.
Hamlin's the favorite. He's at minus 285. And then the next one is Russell Wilson at plus 2,000. So the gap is huge there between the next person, because then it's what Russell, Tua are both plus 2,000, then Lamar Jackson and Breece Hall at plus 2,500, and it goes from there. But I mean, that's a huge gap to have there. So I mean, if you're gonna bet again on anybody else besides DeMar Hamlin, now's the time to do it, because those lines will change if he's not the guy. That's gonna jump. But I mean,
what'd you say the Lamar line was at?
Plus 2,500.
I like that one too.
So let's shoot it over to offensive rookie. Demers, I'm going to start with you on this one. This draft was not top heavy in the offensive side of the ball. However, there are some really good names within the offensive ranks that were drafted. Who is your rookie of the year on the offensive side of the ball this year?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs with the Detroit Lions. They have basically two running backs on their roster right now. And the NFL is, it's a two running back league, right? I know everybody likes Robinson with Atlanta. They need a running back, sure. Detroit's a sneaky team because they could be pretty good this year, right? They lose a lot of close games, and that's always one of their biggest issues. But I think he's going to get a lot of touches, and with his ability to do multiple things out of the backfield, I just think he's going to get enough touches that he's going to put himself in that conversation. I don't think any of the quarterbacks are going to be there this year. And, sometimes you'll see a second or third round wide receiver, pop up. And I was kind of looking through, and I didn't really see anything that stood out now. And they never do, right? That's why they were second or third round picks. If they did, they would have picked in the first round. But, for a mid-first round guy, to me, I think he makes sense.
And J-Rob, what do you have?
I got Bijan, the other rookie running back. It's a position in the NFL that is the easiest for, pun intended, for rookies to hit the ground running.
Totally.
And it just, there's so much that translates to just being a natural runner. Vision is the one thing you cannot teach, no matter how much you sit down with these guys. And you look at these running backs that are this highly touted, they do have that, and they can still apply that at the next level with their physical gifts while they're still in this good age for running backs in the state of the NFL now. And I think he's in the system where it's going to allow for him to flourish. I think the only thing that may stop it, obviously, other than injury, would be that it takes Arthur Smith a little bit too long to fully commit the backfield to him and end up giving more carries than he should to Tyler Algier, just because Tyler Algier is still a capable running back. He's just not the type of running back that Bijan is. So you're right, Trav. It's low hanging fruit, but I mean, I scout 10 guys deep at every position this year. And since I've been doing this, there is no question that he has been the best prospect at this position that I've seen.
I don't disagree with you. I agree with you. I just don't know with Atlanta's offense, and is Ritter good enough to spread the ball around? The offensive line isn't great. Is he going to get the opportunities?
That right side of the offensive line, I don't know if there's any better right side in the league. Left side, okay, I'm with you.
That's what I'm saying. As a whole, the offensive line, right? So our team's going to stack the box against the run because they don't trust Ritter to be able to throw the ball over the top.
Yeah,
right.
I think so.
If they're pulling guys up from the backfield and they're putting 8-9 guys in, they're saying, okay, you can't beat us over the top. We're going to stack the box against the run because that's all you have. Mm-hmm. So that's why I didn't go with him from Atlanta, because I think you're going to see more opportunities in Detroit to run the football.
I got big plans for Detroit this year, and that Jameer, I think it'll be one of those two, just because of how the position fits into the NFL.
Jake, what about you?
I actually went with a receiver again, and I went with Zay Flowers. And the reason is because I agree with Demers and J-Rob in the sense of the running backs get the most love in this usually because it's easier to prove, I think. But the reason I picked him is he's on the Ravens, and I think Lamar's going to have a killer year. When we're going back to that line of having, could he be a comeback guy? Yeah. And you need a receiver to help achieve that. And so I think Zay, depending if he's actually 5'10" or 5'9", like when he lies on his stat sheet, if he can pull it out, but he's fast, quick from Boston College, I think actually he can play pretty well. So that's who I went with.
I've got to piggyback on both J-Rob and Travis here, because I also did pick Jamar Gibbs. And the reason why I picked that is solely because I feel like the Lions have a better team than the Falcons. I do not think that he is a better running back than Bijan. I'd like to say that right now. I think Bijan is elite coming into the league, and he probably has more to offer the position than Gibbs at the moment. However, I do think that when you are looking at awards do tend to come with success, and I'm just not certain how much success the Falcons are going to have here. So with that is my pick. Let's shoot it over to the defensive side of the ball. Jake, I'll go with you this time. What do you
Jalen Carter, defense? Fuck you. That's a guy from the Eagles is taking it. We have not seen talent like this come out from Georgia. Those dogs, this kid is fucking stout. This kid is good. And the other thing that's going to help him, just like I said, how a receiver can get help from a quarterback, the Eagles defense is already fucking good. And now you're going to put a kid like this on there that's just going to help him shine. How do you not? I mean, I don't see it going for any other player. I don't see it going any other way. I think he's going to come out. He's going to be stellar. He's going to match up with this whole team very well and be able to punch people in the mouth. So that's who I'm going with.
I can tell. I know for a fact that Travis and I hope that you're wrong there. Jalen Carter is a beast, and I would really hope that he wouldn't do it. And actually, behind the scenes here, that was my comment to J-Rob before we started recording, that I hope that he is not defensive rookie. So in my hopes, I went with Will Anderson Jr., arguably the best D end in the draft this year. I think that he's going to be able to do some good things, whether it's in stats, whether it's in stopping the run. The guy's talented. He is a great asset to the league, and so that's why I went with him. So, J-Rob, who do you have for defensive?
I have Devin Witherspoon, the Seahawks first-round selection out of Illinois. He was my number one corner with a bullet in this class, and I trust Pete Carroll to be able to use him the right way. And the way that Seattle has this secondary set up right now, the people they have in there, from defensive coordinator Clint Hurt to primarily a guy I love as a position coach, Carl Scott. He comes from your tide, Jake. Just brilliant dude. And he's over there now, and both of them he's the passing game coordinator for the defense. And I think just he's going to bring a lot of that attitude that you see in their secondary will be very good. Whether or not the pass rush in Seattle's defense will be there, I think the secondary will be able to show out, and he's going to be a huge piece for that on the defense and just make some splash plays. If I would have had one option for the Raiders to pick this year, obviously it'd have been Bryce Young. You need that quarterback, and until you get that, it's you can't really even start to consider yourself a contender. But the other guy that I would have wanted them to take was Devin Witherspoon. If we had just anyone to pick that's not a quarterback, and that would have been this guy. So I'm going to stick with that evaluation of him as a prospect, and I think he's in the right spot to do so.
All right, Demers, round it out for us.
Yeah, I don't make predictions with my heart, and I think it's going to be Jalen Carter for basically everything that Jake just said. Right, it's not a character contest, right? It's a football award, and he's the best defensive player in this draft. And when you have a defense that's as good as Philadelphia's, there are going to be some guys that are unblocked, right? There are going to be some decisions that, opposing teams have to make. And that's going to let some guys get free. And I think he's the guy that's going to get free, and he's going to have a big year. He's going to be the rookie of the year.
Guys, thank you so much for doing the picks. We're going to pay some more bills, and we'll be right back. Sometimes people have a story to tell. It could be a story of triumph or a story of sorrow. However, it's their story. It's important to keep their story authentic, in their own words, and delivered in a delicate way. That's where Unfiltered Discussions podcast comes in. I'm Brian Howard. I talk with my guests about tough subjects and pivotal moments. I'd love for you to hear their stories. Subscribe to Unfiltered Discussions on your favorite podcast platform. Let's ensure their stories are heard. Welcome back into the 23-24 NFL preview show. Jake, we've got some pretty good guests here. Not only are they knowledgeable, but they make some pretty good picks. Overall, we're going to get into some of the discussion about the teams here. So, Jake, I'm going to start this with you. Let's go over AFC first. Which division do you want to talk about first and foremost?
The AFC East, because I want to stay as far away from the Texans. Spoiler alert, they're not my team this year. But the AFC East, probably one of my favorite divisions. Just intrigue, seeing how. I mean, we have the Patriots forever. There's always that intrigue with them that they've been so good for so long. The Jets with the Aaron Rodgers whole thing, how that's going to play out. Dolphins, Tua coming back, Roll Tide, and then the Bills. Are they as good as they should be? Can they make it all the way? And I mean, just throwing my pick out there right now. The Bills win this division, in my opinion. I don't think they make it all the way. I think they'll end up choking somewhere down the road, but I think they're the best team in this division, and they're going to have the most wins out of it. I'll say that.
Demers, is Jake wrong in that division, or do you share the same viewpoint?
No, I agree. I don't trust Miami. The Patriots just aren't good enough. And so it comes down to the Jets and Buffalo. And to Jake's point, are the Bills going to be good enough? Early in the season last year, they struggled, and they still turned out to be okay. Obviously every game matters, but if you're not playing your best football in September, it's not the end of the world. I think they're the best, most complete team in that division. The Jets are better, but does Aaron Rodgers take them from being a non-playoff team to a Super Bowl team? It can happen. I mean, we saw Tom Brady do that essentially in Tampa. It has happened before. I just don't know enough about the Jets coaching staff because they haven't proven anything, right? They got off to a great start last year and then fizzled out at the end of the year. So is that coaching staff good enough to take all of these pieces that look great on paper, doesn't always work out that way, and make it work on the field? So I'm just going to go with the team that I trust, and that's Buffalo.
I agree with that. I think it's a hard thing to take a bot team to a dance, if that makes sense. I mean, we've seen it over and over again where teams create that quote unquote super team or that whatever you want to call it, and they end up folding throughout the year. I too am kind of concerned about the Jets and their progress there. I think that this is a division where any team has a chance to win. I will say that the Patriots probably don't have as good a chance as the rest of the teams here. I would say that if J-Rob is right and Tua has a solid year, I think the Dolphins take it, to be candid. But that is contingent on his health. If he's not healthy, that's my default there. But I'm going to go with you with what you said, J-Rob. He is going going to have a good year. I'm going to go with the Dolphins in this division. What say you?
So it's tough because I would love to see it because I love all the pieces they put over there. They have guys that you know by name, and then they also have like my guys that I know from just like grinding tape. And I love the staff over there so far, the things they both do schematically, especially with picking up Vic Fangio, which so much of the NFL has transformed their coverage styles into different versions of what he originated. So I have a lot invested in there, but I'll stick with them. I'll pick with them. I gotta keep it consistent at least. And I think more than just two is health with this team. It comes also down to the health of Teron Armstead. But I also think when I think about it, health is something that applies to the rest of the NFL. And if that gets derailed from where you are, who you are, then it can tend to just, throw the whole thing off course. So I've been all in for more or less on this Dolphins team, hoping that the health stays there, going to bet on guys who otherwise it may not look that way. If health is that roadblock, yeah, it's going to be the Bills. It definitely is going to be the Bills. I don't think the Patriots have a chance to win this division at all. I don't. Yes, it's going to be better than it was before. They have not only an adult on the sideline calling plays for them in Bill O'Brien, but someone who actually knows how to run NFL offenses. They could have one of the best defenses in the league, but this is an offensive league where you got to have juice, and winning 16-13 can only happen so much. So I like Miami just with kind of how things are shaping up for them. I think it's a fun pick. Wouldn't be surprised at all if it was the Bills. Jets I have in the playoffs, but not taking the division overall.
So J-Rob, take me to a different division within the AFC. Where are you taking us?
Let's go back to the AFC West. The team, and then not the team, but the division last year that all of us were really having our eyes on before everything started.
And what team are you thinking that's going to take the cake?
It's the Chiefs. Like I almost want to say next. I mean, it's the Chiefs. The one thing I want to point out with them though, over the years, it's not what would I say? How would I put it? It's not just that they have been good, it's how they have been good. We saw them during their tenure with the first Super Bowl before they even made the Super Bowl, where they were just bombing on teams with deep shots down the field, doing all this crazy stuff, slicing up single high safety coverages. The league switches. They make Mahomes have to play against these two high coverages. They get rid of Tyreek Hill. He then has to play point guard and be efficient. He's throwing the ball not as far down the field. He's having to play a little bit more methodical. He might be having to run a little bit more. And it's still working. And they're still unstoppable in these different ways that you've had to play against him. If you're a coordinator right now playing against Patrick Mahomes, playing against how to stop this offense, I don't even know what you do. You try things, almost throw darts at a board and see if it sticks. So that's really where I think this team is now. So to me, yeah, it's definitely the Chiefs.
I'm glad you brought up coordinators because they lost their offensive coordinator to the Commanders.
They did.
And Reed is such a phenomenal coach. He's really, really great at what he does, arguably the best in the game right now. Does that play any effect on their win-loss ratio or their success in the division, do you think?
No, I would say it doesn't because you have the generals still there. You lose a couple of, your front mates, you still have the general there that's going to be able to drive the ship. I think that's a big reason why Bieniemy left, is because he realized with that team he was never going to be able to apply his fingerprints to the result of what they did. It was always going to go to Reed. It was always going to go to Mahomes. It might even go to Kelsey, et cetera, first. So you still have the marrow of the bones there to make it the body that it is that just seems so indestructible lately when you look at the scope of the NFL.
All right, Travis, talk to me about the AFC West. What are your thoughts on that division?
Next, no, I agree with everything that J-Rob said. I mean, I don't know how I can add to that really, but I think there's such a steep drop off in that division from the Chiefs to everybody else, right? And obviously we've talked about, I think more off air than on air, about the Broncos defense is terrific, but is their offense going to be able to do enough to be even remotely close to touching the Chiefs? We're not talking about making the playoffs. We're talking about winning the division. The answer is no. Do you trust the Chargers and all of their pieces? Sure, that just haven't been tested enough. No. And the Raiders are, they're expected to be not very good this year. They're not very good. So to me, yeah, I mean, we can talk about all of those details and all the things that make the Chiefs as good as they are. And to me, that discussion's relevant, but that discussion's relevant in why they can win the Super Bowl, not why they can win the division. Why they can win the division is because nobody else is even close to them.
Speaking of discussions, this was way too long for an easy pick. The fucking Chiefs. Next. Like, honestly.
Do you know who Patrick Mahomes is?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
I hate his
I'm
wife.
just checking.
I hate his wife, and I hate his brother. So they can both suck it.
Hey,
okay?
I agree with you on that one.
Easy pick, Chiefs. I don't know. You got for the easiest pick, you guys talked a fucking awful lot. I know it's a podcast, but damn, move on. B word. Let me guess your pick. The Chiefs.
The Chiefs.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any other team taking it. I figured we should at least try to dissect it a little bit, but yeah, I don't see any other team making waves other than the Chiefs. So we'll go from there. So Demers, take us to a different division.
Yeah, let's go AFC South.
The Texans.
Fuck you.
Is that what you're going to say, Jake?
No, fuck you.
All right, Demers, who do you have winning this division?
Yeah, there's a team that I like, but I keep forgetting who their quarterback is.
The Jags.
Which squad
the Jaguars.
Sunshine, right?
Oh yeah, them.
Yeah, Jacksonville. Tennessee, I think, is on their way out. Their quarterback situation is not great. Obviously drafting another quarterback, another mid-round quarterback. The future, okay, but right now, what does it look like? And it's just not good enough. Houston is terrible. Right. And the Colts are a total mess right now. A young team with some good things to work on in the future with a young quarterback. But now they're just not very good right now. And obviously, Taylor's not going to be playing for at least the first 4 games if he ever plays for the Colts again. So to me, the most stable team in that division, as shocking as it is the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I'm going to piggyback on that to kind of talk about Jake with easy picks. I got to go with the Jags. I think that Trevor Lawrence he's a talented quarterback. Ooh. I think last year he was a little young. Trevor Lawrence, that's
that guy.
What?
Yeah, who's
Travis?
That?
Trevor. Oh, my bad.
I see what you're doing here. I was totally going down a path, and I thought I messed it up. But here we go. So, long story short, I don't see any other team making waves here, but I very well could be wrong. I reserve that right. J-Rob, your thoughts?
It's the Jags. It is the Jags. Just like Demers said, you look at the scope of this division as a whole. You have one team that I feel like is going down the mountain, and you have another team that's like, two others that are just starting to try to climb up. And then you have the Jags, who are pretty much where they want to be with this regime and kind of how they've set up, the building blocks of this organization over the last couple of years. You saw them be able to gut out an amazing playoff performance last year. Trevor Lawrence, that is, had his moment in the postseason against Justin Herbert, who you had winning the Super Bowl last year, Jake. So it's funny you don't remember that dude's name.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, this offense just got better by adding Calvin Ridley. I do think he's a decent pick for that comeback player of the year award because he is a good receiver. And that's an area where this offense really needed. If they were going to add any juice beyond offensive linemen, this was the area to do it. And hey, I love what Doug Peterson's doing over there. And I think they just have the most ingredients to win this division pretty easily.
Jake?
I don't remember the quarterback's name, but it's the Jags. No, it's the Jaguars. They honestly were one of my picks. I have a bet in for them to win the Super Bowl. Not that it's going to happen, but I threw some cash at it because you know what? It'd be one of those teams that would surprise me. The Colts are just a mess, and I think it's going to be one of those teams where the background noise really, really affects them, and the other two teams in the division are just shit. So Jags are taking this. It's an easy home run for them. I know we always say that. And we're like, this is the easy pick, and then it doesn't turn out that way. But I don't see this division going any other way.
So, gentlemen, that leaves the AFC North. I'm going to go ahead with my pick. Just looking at the teams within the North, I don't know that I can choose a team other than Cincinnati. I think Joe Burrow is probably the most accomplished quarterback within that division. I will say that there are going to be teams that make noise, specifically the Steelers, I think are going to be a little underrated this year. However, I think that the pieces are there for the Bengals to get back to the big game. Whether they do or not is a whole other story, but I think that they're going to take the division. Jake, do you share those same thoughts?
I do. The only sleeper team for me would be the Ravens, and that's if Lamar has a really good year. But I think the Bengals take this head and shoulders above other people. I don't see the Browns do anything. The Steelers, I don't agree with you on that pick. I think they're going to be decent and just be a mid-range team because they'll play other divisions and do decent. But the Bengals are going to take this all the way. There's no way they lose that, and I think they hold on to it. And they're actually going to be one of the top AFC teams overall.
Demers, what about you?
Yeah, I think the Bengals are the only team in that division that's a Super Bowl contender, right? So why would they not win that division? Of course, anything can happen. It's the NFL. But to me, they're the only legit contender in that division. The Ravens are good. The Steelers, I think they will be a little underrated this year. And the Browns, what's the story with Deshaun Watson? What is this season going to look like for him? I think that the Bengals, on paper, it's an easy pick. A lot of it comes down, again, to stability for me. And that's one of the reasons I make the picks that I do, whether they're right or wrong. But to me, the Bengals are the only team in that division that's a legit contender.
J-Rob, round us out.
The closer we get to the season, the more I want to say this is the best division in football. I do think that the Browns will. I could see the Browns in the playoffs. I could see them there. I could see any team from this division in the playoffs more than I can say that for any other division in the NFL right now, because of the changes that have been made for the Steelers, for the Browns in particularly, bringing in Jim Schwartz after spending some time over there in Tennessee, kind of learning things where he lacks in terms of his acumen. But at the top of the division, if I was going to pick, I can see a scenario or a world where Baltimore is in the AFC title game. And if they get there, who knows what's going to happen. But for my pick, it is the Bengals as well. I've been very high on this team, obviously. I mean, most people have for the last couple of years. I think Joe Burrow, to me, has cemented himself as the guy, not only who has a seat at the table of the best quarterbacks, but who is the next one after we talk about Patrick Mahomes. I think it's Joe Burrow. And I think this might be, and I kind of was mentioning this a little bit when you guys are bringing him up for your choice for MVP. This is the best unit I think he's had to work with offensively. The collection of talent that they have, the depth that they have in certain places, the offensive line's been a big detriment, of course, the year that he went out. And he hasn't made that bank-breaking deal yet. So this might be it, because we all know that deal's coming for him. It's coming for Chase. We all know. And when so many pieces of that pie get eaten up by other people's contracts, when they get that second one, it's tough to be as deep as this team is this year. So to me, the Bengals are, I love them as a Super Bowl pick this year. It's between them and, no spoilers here, but it's the Chiefs. But yeah, I think the Bengals really are the cream of the crop when it comes to this division that I'm expecting a lot from top to bottom.
I'm going to take you guys over to the NFC North now. You've got a lot of changes that happen in this particular division. We've all talked a little bit tonight about the Lions. I think the Lions have what it takes to take the NFC North. I do think that it's going to be a little bit more competitive than probably we're giving credit for with the Vikings and also with the Packers, who I think Jordan Love might make some noise as well. But my pick for the NFC North will be the Detroit Lions. Travis, what say you?
Going back to Minnesota, again, I like Detroit. I think they have a great chance of being a playoff team. I'm not a big fan of Love in Green Bay. I don't. If he was the guy, don't you think they would have figured something out a little sooner?
Yes.
To him?
Yes.
So yeah, just like when Brett Favre retired, they said, "Okay, boom, Aaron Rodgers, you're in, go." Right? They didn't want Brett Favre back.
They were pushing him out.
They're pushing him out. They did everything that they could to try and keep Aaron Rodgers kind of. They gave the impression that they were doing everything that they could to keep Aaron Rodgers around because they knew they didn't really have the guy behind it. So I don't like the Packers. I don't like the Bears this year. And the Lions just haven't shown me anything. I have a hard time picking teams that are on the cusp. Maybe it's because I don't have the stones to do it, to pick a team that hasn't quite shown anything yet and say, okay, this is their year to really step up. So I'm going to go with the status quo in the NFC North with Minnesota, because I do agree that Jefferson is going to be an MVP candidate. And, I think that Kirk Cousins is a great regular season quarterback. Playoffs hasn't been there for him. I do like their defense. I like their offensive line. I think they're the most complete team in that division. I like Minnesota.
J-Rob, who do you got?
I think funny. I don't have Minnesota taking it, but I do think Minnesota will be a better team this year than they were last year. I think that 13 wins was somewhat of a mirage because we all saw how Daniel Jones just absolutely sliced them up. And I think, Travis, your boy Danny Dimes owes Ed Donatel some of that contract that he got, because that's the only reason why he was able to beat them up, because Ed Donatel made it pretty easy for him to win that shit. Yeah. So he owes him some money. He may have slid him a check if he's going to be a good Samaritan. But no, I do think Minnesota will be a good team this year, and it definitely is between them and Detroit. But I really love what Dan Campbell and this staff overall has put down as a coach. The culture that he has built over there, he was such a great hire. And I'll admit it, at the time when they got him in the building, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I wanted to see Eric Bieniemy get his chance, right? That's what I really wanted to see. But now seeing who Dan Campbell is, what this regime has established, them building their own brand, that team would run through a brick wall for him. They really would. And when you have that there in a year where it's open, where they can do it, I'm going to go ahead and hitch my wagon to them. And especially because I think you not only you have those type of feeling in there, you have Goff who's capable enough, especially when you look at the weapons around him. And this offensive line is easily the best in the division that the Lions have. I think it's the third-ish best offensive line in the NFL. So I'm picking the Lions probably about one game ahead of the Vikings. And I think we see both of these teams in the playoffs in the NFC this year.
Jake?
Vikings take it. The reason is I'm like Demers. I can't go with a team that has never proven anything to me. And I think the Vikings will win the division in the regular season and then they'll try to make noise in the playoff and not make it that far, because I think that'll hit them. But the Lions are that team that I just can't trust. I think they'll have hype. They might start out hot, and then I think somewhere on the road they're going to trip on themselves and fuck it up. I agree that the players want to play for them. I think the Bears are absolute shit. I think the Packers are absolute shit. But that's about it. It's going to come down to about one game, and I think the Vikings take it all.
J-Rob, take us down south. Talk with us about the NFC South this year. Who's your pick?
Oh, man. I can nerd out on all teams in football, obviously, but when you bring us to these highs of these teams we have talked about before, this is kind of, we're dropping the anchor on this part of the scope of the NFL. I do want to see my boy Derek Carr over there in New Orleans and what he can do. That's probably a lot of people's favorite. But with the way this division looks, the two teams I'm thinking we're going to get something similar. We're kind of going to get something similar to overall what we had last year before the two teams. Everyone in this division pretty much went 7-9, except for the Bucs last season. I think we're going to see something similar with very similar win totals between all of them. I'm going to think the two teams at the top of it, I'm going to say Carolina, and I'll pick New Orleans. I'll say Carolina and New Orleans. Those are the two ones that I want, and primarily just because the quarterbacks throughout this whole entire division make Derek Carr look like he can walk on water. Maybe not walk on water, but he's stepping on water lilies or something like that. You know what I mean? And that's enough for it, just at least for me to lean on that team to win. I think Atlanta has some nice pieces, and they're going to do some cool stuff, but their pass rush hasn't been good for years. Like you said earlier, Trav, we were talking about Desmond Ridder in a division that has bad quarterbacks overall. He's probably the second worst, because who knows what quarterback's going to be out there for Tampa Bay. I don't know. There's not a lot to like in this division. If I had to hitch my wagon to one, I want to see the Panthers because I love that defense, but I just think there's enough continuity and a good enough quarterback over there in New Orleans for me to – I'll say they take the division. I'll say they will. It might be one of those teams that get him with like 9 wins, 9-8, whatever it is.
J-Rob, I want to piggyback on that, because if you're looking at the quarterbacks that the Saints play, you're talking about the Texans, the Panthers, the Buccaneers, of course, but then probably the best quarterback that they take on outside of that would be Mac out in the Patriots. I just don't know that you're dealing with great quarterbacks at all. So with that, I don't think that there's a route for any other team to take this division other than the Saints. I think that you're dealing with a capable quarterback with a change of scenery, which always helps, or usually helps, in the mode of Derek Carr. And then, they still have some good pieces over there. I don't think that they're a bad team. I just don't know that they're going to be a successful team long term. So I'm going to go with the Saints. Travis, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, to me, it's New Orleans. And for a division that is evenly average across the board, who has the best quarterback? And it's no question, it's Carr. I always thought it got a bad rap in Vegas with Bryce Young in Carolina. Terrific defense, but is a rookie quarterback going to catch on quick enough to take that team to the postseason? He doesn't have to, because whoever's going to win, it's probably going to be an 8 or 9 win football team. I don't think Atlanta's got enough. Who am I missing? Tampa. Yeah, I don't trust Baker Mayfield. So if we're looking at an even division, who's the best quarterback? It's New Orleans with Carr.
Jake, finish us out.
Just like last year, I picked a South team that nobody else did, and I'm going with the Falcons. I think the Falcons take it. I think Derek Carr is actually not going to perform as well as people predict him over there. The Bucs are untrustable, and I can really give a shit. I don't even know who's on the Panthers anymore. I didn't even know that team still existed. So I'm going to go with the Falcons because of that.
They existed.
We try to be a little scientific.
What do they say? Keep
here.
Pounding or whatever. That fuck yeah, pound fucking sand. Get the fuck out of here.
It's pound me too.
Whatever, pound me too. Yeah, get the fuck out.
Yeah. So Jake, take us over to your new team over in the NFC West, to the Cardinals. Talk to me a little bit about their division and what your expectations
are.
The
Cardinals will be the best, worst team in all of football, and I am proud to say that part. They will finish that.
What does that mean?
They're last place. They're absolutely fucking garbage. Last place. They will be the worst of the worst. But I got the Niners winning this division. I know I said that. I was pretty high on them last year. I think if they can keep a quarterback, they're going to have it all this year. I think they're going to figure that out. But the Seahawks, I just can't trust yet. I really can't. I don't know what to think of this team, and I think the Rams have had their time, and I've moved past them. So I'm going with the Niners. I think it's a chalk pick. I could be wrong after I listen to you guys, but that's what I got.
Travis, what about you?
Yeah, I'm with the Niners too. I went back and forth between the Niners and Seahawks, and I mean the Niners defense, it's decent, right? They got a decent little defense out there in San Francisco. Do we really know what to trust or expect with Brock Purdy with a full season as the number one quarterback? We don't. But I don't think you need to, right? You don't have to have this expansive playbook offensively from the quarterback position when you have guys like McCaffrey and some of the other weapons that they have offensively and a defense that's that good. And I'm not saying that the offense has to play not to lose. They just have to not screw up a lot to win that division, because the Seahawks are a decent football team. They're a borderline playoff team, but they're not anything special. They could be anywhere from a 6 to 11 win team based on how the ball bounces a couple of times, right? I'm with you on the Rams, Jake, and the Cardinals are, 2, 3, 4 win football team. So with that, I mean, I think the Niners defense is so good that they don't have to do much offensively to win that division.
J-Rob?
Yeah, 100%, Trav, just like you were saying about the Niners. This is a team we have seen win in the NFC Championship game where Jimmy Garoppolo handed the ball off every play but 8 and threw it 8 times. And the game was never in question as to who won. This is another team that a year later when they played the Packers in the snow when Aaron Rodgers was winning, sandwiched in between MVP seasons, and they didn't even score a touchdown. They blocked a kick and kicked a field goal. This is how this team is. We could be looking at a scenario where Sam Darnold is in an NFC Championship game, and I mean, to me, all this unknowns and this plugging in Jenga pieces to the quarterback position, all this stuff that we've seen, that explains how good this roster is. That explains how good this team is. And I know they lost D'Amico Ryans. He's over there coaching your Texans, Jake, to win the South again. They lost a couple other minute pieces, but they brought in Javon Hargrave from Philly to strengthen up something that was already a strength. And like you said, Trav, they have the pieces beyond McCaffrey offensively to be able to make it work. Their 5 skill players might be better than any other 5 skill players in the league. So, yeah, they're at the top of it. I do like Seattle this year. I think they can do some cool things. But, I mean, we're talking about Geno delivering on a season that he put up out of nowhere and doing better than he ever had been. We're talking about a draft class that all just clicked into place at once, expecting that to happen again. And I expect them to be a good team. I don't expect them to be better than the Niners. And Rams, I think they'll surprise, maybe 6-7 wins. And the Cardinals, I mean, just play that Chris Stapleton album starting over and don't look at the screen. So, yeah.
I agree with all of you. I do think that the 49ers are probably going to take this division. I was originally, a couple weeks ago, if you would ask me, I think I would have said the Seahawks. But in comparing the two teams, us taking out Geno Smith and Brock Purdy, I think just all the skill positions and the defense go mightily toward the 49ers. And then I think if you get a bus driver quarterback in there, that's all that they have to do is not crash the bus. I think that leans heavily again toward the 49ers. So I do have to go with the Niners in the NFC West. And let's finish up with the NFC East, gentlemen. Travis, I'm going to throw this over to you. Fellow NFC East fan, you and I hold a lot of animosity toward each other. However, you and I are also fearful, I imagine, of one team in particular in this division. So talk with me about your prediction in this division here.
See, I don't think it's even necessary as a Giants fan or a Cowboys fan to be fearful of the Eagles, right? Because they're on top. They're the team that just went to the Super Bowl. You're not going to fear the best team, right? Because they're not sneaking up on anybody. You fear the teams that nobody thinks are going to beat you. I don't think it's much of a race in the division. I think the Eagles are clearly the best team in the NFC East. I like the Giants. I think they have a good chance of being a playoff team. I think the Cowboys do too, not Washington. But the Eagles' defense is unbelievable. I think them and the 49ers, those two teams and their defenses, their defenses alone could carry them to a Super Bowl. But Jalen Hurts really hit another level last year. They have weapons. They're a very well-coached football team. You look at the history of the Eagles, and they had this long stretch of going to NFC Championship games. They only went to one Super Bowl. To me, those teams aren't anywhere near as good as this Eagles team is right now. And it's no disrespect to Andy Reid or Donovan McNabb or anybody else who was on those teams. They had a great run. This Eagles team is better. And is Jalen Hurts better than Donovan McNabb was? I don't know. But this defense is better than any defense the Eagles had in that stretch when they were really at their peak. And to me, I just don't think it's much of a race at all.
I'm going to go ahead and hop in here because I am also a fan of this division. I agree with you, Travis. I don't think that we have to fear the Eagles. I think I may have said that incorrectly. However,
we can hate them. And
we absolutely hate them. I will say that this division is going to be a defensive fight for every team in the division. You talked a lot about the Philadelphia Eagles defense. I would put the Dallas Cowboys defense right up with the Philadelphia's defense any day of the week. Mm-hmm. That was the matchup that I was hoping for in the playoffs last year. I was hoping for a healthy Cowboys versus a healthy Eagles, winner take all, and let's go. And that just didn't work out due to injuries. I'm actually going to throw it up. I'm going to throw out my original prediction, and I'm going to sound like a homer here. But in looking at the division champion, there has not been a NFC East champion that has repeated since the Eagles almost 20 years ago. I'm going to go ahead and continue with that streak. I do think that it's going to be hard fought. I think that both teams will be in the playoffs. I'm going to choose the Cowboys. And the reason why I'm going to choose the Cowboys is because we have lost one coordinator. We lost Kellen Moore. We now have Mike McCarthy. In the same way we were talking about, or I was talking about the 49ers having a bus driver, I do think that Dak can be a capable bus driver in this scenario. But we've upgraded some offensive weapons with Brandon Cooks, and of course, I think Deuce Vaughn's going to make some noise this year. He's probably not going to be one of the leading running backs, but I do think that he's going to be a good weapon that they utilize. And then our defense just got entirely better. So I do think that they're going to take the division. Whether or not they actually perform in the playoffs is another thing for me. But I'm going to go. I'm at the risk of sounding like a homer. I am going to do that. And J-Rob, am I wrong?
The defense, I think, I can say that there's enough there to put their defense at least somewhere up there with Philly. Because Philly did lose some people. I mean, I think that's something that needs to be talked about. They lost TJ Edwards. They lost CJ Gardner-Johnson. They lost Marcus Epps. They lost Hargrave. I mean, so those type of drop-offs, it can be tough to supplement people in there, especially considering that you're mostly playing now with two more or less new safeties back there. So we'll see if they can do it. But I think they have enough guys at the right positions. Coverage on the outside, pass rush up front. That's really what you need on third. That's really what you need on third down in the NFL to excel. And their offense, that's going to continue to fly. Overall, the Cowboys defense, though, did bring in Stephon Gilmore. That's probably the best number 2 corner you've had opposite of Trayvon Diggs. I do like what you have going on up front this year. Word out of camp is that you're going to use Parsons as a full-time edge rusher. We're not going to do this thing where he plays off the ball every now and then just to kind of be cute. No, we're just going to line this dude up on the edge and say, do what you do, and unleash him against teams. And I do think the receiving core is back to having at least enough capable pieces for a quarterback that is cerebral like Dak to be able to take what the defense is going to give him and take advantage of it. While all that's there, the one thing that continues to hold me back and just puts the yellow light in all of my NOS that I'm putting in the car, Mike McCarthy is calling plays. That is what's stopping me right there. Kellen Moore is out the door. And how in the hell Mike McCarthy can even sit here and say, without Kellen gone, we're going to run the ball more when you ran the ball like the 6th or 7th most in the NFL last year? Like, that was the problem. Like, this is typical Mike McCarthy behavior. I've read this book before. So I like the Cowboys. You will be in the playoffs. I don't see you ahead of Philly, even though that team is working with 2 different coordinators. Just too much talent over there for them to be able to prosper. Travis, sorry, bro. I got your Giants in last in the division. I got your Giants
behind
in
Washington,
last.
really.
Behind Washington. I like that Washington defense. I think there was some bounce of the ball luck with New York last year. There was. I love Brian Daboll and what he did. I think I'm so glad to see Andrew Thomas, your left tackle, flourish like he did last season.
About time.
Yeah, but the rest of the offensive line, I still have, who was the tackle you took out of Alabama last year, the right tackle, he struggled. I still got to see a lot more. The defense will be good, but I can see you guys losing more of those weird 13-17, 13-16 games, and maybe being just coming in with like 7 wins this year.
Jake, what are your thoughts on the NFC East?
Cowboys.
I love you so much.
I hate you. I
could not ask for a better co-host.
There's no repeater. It's not going to happen. I think as Demers was saying earlier, though, it's more the fear factor in the sense that people fear the Eagles, so they're going to prepare better for them. So I think people are going to play better against them, and it's just going to come down to the Cowboys will be underestimated a little more and have a few more wins. That's it, though.
All right, guys. So here's what everybody wants to know. Who is your Super Bowl prediction, and who do you think is going to win? So, Demers, let's start with you. Who are the teams that are going to make it to the big dance, and who's taking the cake?
Can we all agree that the Chiefs and the Eagles are the favorites,
Yes.
right, to get back to face each other in the Super Bowl? Every year that we do this, it's like, okay, if you pick the favorites, then you're just being lazy and you're going with the favorites that everybody else is going with. But then if you go with other teams, it's like, all right, you're overthinking it, and it's just going to be the same teams that we expect. It's never the same teams back-to-back years. It's happened once ever. It's not going to happen again. So I'm going one team that was in the Super Bowl last year and one team that was not in the Super Bowl last year. In the NFC, it's between the Niners and the Eagles to me. And it comes down to the last 2 minutes of a game, which quarterback do you trust? I think just about everything is even across the board. Who do I want in that last second situation to try and lead my team to a victory? It's Jalen Hurts. So I'm taking Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia is back in the Super Bowl as much as it, pains me to the core of my being. I'm picking the Eagles back in the Super Bowl where they will beat the Cincinnati Bengals. I like Cincinnati in the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Philly over Cincinnati in the Super Bowl.
He said it with his chest out, too. Put all 10 toes in the ground. Wow. All right, J-Rob, you?
My Super Bowl prediction, as I think I had said earlier on the show, it's getting to the point with the Chiefs where they're in that echelon where Tom Brady was, where it almost gets, or the Patriots were, where it almost gets like boring to pick them. But I feel like just if I were to have to pick them, they are the team that I believe will represent the AFC, would be the Kansas City Chiefs. And I mean, for all the reasons that we were talking about earlier, why I think they win the division, this also applies to the rest of the NFL. And who they go against, I think, is a little bit more interesting part of it. But my vote would have to go to the San Francisco 49ers this year. I understand all the injuries that have been in place with them before. And I think when we look at that team, that's the only thing that we would see derailing that squad. And in the NFL, we all know if you're not healthy, if you don't have all your horses, that's going to derail you in general. So they're basically in the same bucket as everybody else in that regard. So yeah, I would have to pick the Niners. I know, to your chagrin as a Cowboys fan, that's who I'd have to go with. But that defense is still very good. You have the former defensive MVP. I think they'll be able to sort something out with Nick Bosa, who's currently holding out at the moment. He's not there. You drop in Javon Hargrave next to him, who comes over from Philly in free agency, and he's just an 11.5 sack guy that you could put on the defensive line right next to your defensive MVP. Behind those two guys, you also have Talanoa Hufanga and Fred Warner. So, I mean, that type of defense is just what really makes a huge, huge, huge difference in the postseason. Those playmakers they have when they go to that lineup of death of Ayuk and Kittle and Debo, McCaffrey, and then Juszczyk being so versatile, it makes it easy to where Brock Purdy doesn't necessarily have to be a world beater. He just has to be good enough. And I think he is good enough to allow them to get to the Super Bowl with everything else that's in place. Who's winning out of that team? I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, man. I cannot pick against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, my team as a Raider fan, I have to play this guy twice a year. And I have seen a time where we beat the Chiefs. Do I expect that to happen again? No. Even still, that team is just they are at the peak right now. They're in that rare air where certain athletes and teams can reach to where, yeah, I'm just going to kind of pick them, even though it's boring, because I can't, if I'm going to sit here and say who I think is the best, who has what it takes more than anybody else, the Kansas City Chiefs, I think, will repeat this year as Super Bowl champions.
Jake, what about you?
So when I started looking into this, I didn't want to do the lazy thing and just pick the teams from last year, even though I don't think they're both going there. The other thing I did is I went and looked up Betsy. And Betsy is a betting expert's algorithm that runs. It's a program. And what it does is it runs every NFL game in the season 100,000 times. And it came up with the top two, and one of them was one of my picks, and it was the repeat of the 89 Super Bowl of the Bengals-Niners. I think both teams go. The other pick that it had was, of course, the repeat, but I agree with Demers. I don't think it's going to happen. It's rare that it ever happens, and something's going to get mixed up there. So I have the Niners playing the Bengals, but I actually have the Bengals winning this because I don't trust the Niners all the way through at the final game. And it's not because of the quarterback play. I think their defense it's not because their defense is going to be great. It's the quarterback play. And I think overall Burrow is going to take it over the top, and the Bengals actually take home the Lombardi this year.
So for me, the NFC is the hardest pick for me. I think that the Dallas Cowboys could make waves if they had two positions solidified, those being offensive line and running
and the
back.
referee.
And the referee. I think if they had those, they would probably be a more formidable team in my eyes, where I would be comfortable taking them at least to the championship game, if not to the big dance. So with that, then it comes down to, okay, who are the other two teams that are solid in the NFC? That being the Eagles and that being the 49ers. If I were to take Brock Purdy against Jalen Hurts, like Demers said, I think I have to go with Jalen Hurts there. I think that the Eagles have a good offensive skill position. I don't think that the offensive skill position is better than the 49ers, so I would have to go with that there. I think to round it all out, the defense is going to be the key, so I'm going to go with the 49ers making the big dance in the NFC, assuming that Brock Purdy is healthy or whoever might be at the helm at quarterback, and I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. I think that Joe Burrow is a great quarterback. He's the one quarterback in the league right now that Patrick Mahomes reveres. And I think that that's interesting because if you look at some of the quarterback battles that we've had as of late with Manning and Brady or some others, you look at a lot of respect and a lot of success that comes with that. And for Burrow, I really want to see Burrow actually win. I think that Cincinnati has a great team. I don't think that they're better than the 49ers when they're humming. And as much as I hate Bay Area fans, I think I'm going to go with the 49ers this year over the Cincinnati Bengals. Gentlemen, thank you again for joining us for this season preview. Certainly appreciate it. J-Rob, you have a football-centric podcast. Would you mind telling our followers where they can find you on that?
The Cover Zero podcast. Be sure when you're searching for it, you type in because there's another one out there that is not that, but the Cover Zero podcast presented by the SSAW network. And we just completed all of our previews for the entire league. We went division by division, 30 minutes at least on every single team. So no matter who your team is, we cover how your season went last year, some of the statistical numbers behind that, free agents lost and free agents acquired, review your draft class, and also drop our thoughts of your entire coaching staff down from, your GM to the head coach, the coordinators, and maybe even the towel boy, if he may have a pivotal role in that squad. And then also, just pretty much everything in our expectations for your squad this year. So we'll have 2 shows a year, starting when the season starts, preview show releasing on Friday mornings and a recap show releasing on Monday mornings every single week. So yeah, the Cover Zero podcast presented by the SSAW Network.
Now, Travis, I don't know if it was this time last year that you did not have your podcast for the Section 113. You did when we were going through
113.
That's what I said, 113. Clear your ears
bad.
out.
I just like to yell at him.
Yes, you do. So, Travis, you want to plug your podcast, and then, of course, let us know what you do professionally and where people can find you?
Yeah, so I am the radio play-by-play announcer for the Portland Trailblazers, so you can hear me for every Trailblazers game. If you're not in the Portland area, listening on the Oregon area, listening on one of our affiliates, the NBA League Pass audio is $10 for the year, and you can listen to every radio broadcast from every team in the league, which is pretty awesome. And then my podcast, I'm not doing it during the summer. It's kind of a game preview. I did it every game last year, and it was too much. I'm going to do it weekly this year. We'll start in training camp, which begins October 2nd. That's on. You can go pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. It's the Section 113 podcast. Section 113 is where we broadcast the games from. It's an interview-based podcast, so with players, coaches, broadcasters from other teams, and we'll be doing that once a week once things get underway here in about a little over a month.
Awesome. Well, with that, Jake, let's finish this out. What do you got for me?
Thanks for all the dirty talk, and come back, get sanitized.